Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we've got a very special guest. His name is Nicholas Kelly, and Nicholas's approach to life is filled with compassion, artistry, knowledge, and a deep-rooted desire to do good in the world. At 3 months, he was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis by his mother, but he never let his condition prevent him from pursuing a normal life. He worked hard, overcame obstacles, and thrived in all that he did, and went through a whole bunch of educational stuff, and he became a dietitian and an author, a poet, an educator, a dancer, and a decorated speaker. So without any more of that, Nicholas, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So why don't you tell me, a little bit about your backstory? I'd like to hear, where everybody came from and how they got to where they're at.
So like I said, my name's Nick Kelly. I am Cleveland born and raised, CLE, stand up. I am 39-year-old male living with cystic fibrosis. And as mentioned, I actually got diagnosed at 3 months. The interesting part of the story is not that I was sick as a child, but it was actually my mother who diagnosed me. Because 39 years ago.
How did she, there was no internet back then. There was no, PubMed. There was no, WebMD, any of that stuff. How did she figure this out?
She, I always say, she always tells me she had a mother's intuition and she got into the books. Is actually what drove her into medicine. So I had like some false negative tests that appeared like failure to thrive. And then my sodium test was like a false positive. So it wasn't like definitive. Nothing was definitive, but especially because 39 years ago, they didn't believe African Americans could have the disease. So no one was for it. And so it was actually her who did the research.
Explain to the audience a little bit about cystic fibrosis. That hasn't come up a lot in our podcast, so I don't know much about it myself.
So cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder that affects primarily the lungs, the GI system, and the pancreas, but it actually has the ability to affect everything because what happens is the body builds thick, sticky mucus everywhere in your body that causes different reactions and causes issues, especially in the lung. It decreases lung function over time, causing scarring in the lungs and decreased breathing. It actually is, there is no cure. And it is a genetically terminal disease.
Got it. So it was like you just had a burden on your lungs all the time is probably the part that you felt.
So for me, when I was younger, it was my GI system. So it was really the stomach that I had the most issues with. It wasn't until I got older where I started having issues with my lungs. So it's one of those things that over the course of time, CF has a way to progress and show you different things. And then I had issues with my pancreas. So I'm a diabetic as well because of CF. So that's something else that happened over time. So all these things occur over time. It even affects your sexual health. It makes a lot of men who are infertile. So like 97% of all CF males are infertile as well.
Wow.
So it really has the ability to affect, like I said, every part of the body.
So with the pancreas side of things, it would behave kind of like a type 1 diabetes where it's picture with your diet. I mean, it was something that you had.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's really like a combination between type 1 and type 2.
Okay.
Like 1.5, if you will.
Okay. All right.
Because some of the pathways exist very similar to 2, but some of the pathways exist very similar to 1. But if you have CFRD, which is cystic fibrosis-related diabetes, you're generally on insulin, so very similar to a type 1 diabetic.
Got it. So, according to your bio, you didn't let that slow you down. You just kept going. Was your mom instrumental in that, or did you just have the drive that said, too bad, I'm going to keep going?
My parents were very instrumental in that. My mom is the fierce competitor, the fire that goes, and my dad is like the calm of the storm.
Okay.
So they have like this perfect balance, and they've instilled that with me. So I know when I need to push, and I know when I need to pull. So those are what they got me in. Really, they instilled this mentality in me that my situation is not defined by my disease. I was held to the same standards as my siblings, and I never looked at myself as sick. So because of that, it always forced me to be in a situation where I had to thrive. I had to achieve.
Well, it's kind of cool because your parents are in the generation where we just shook ourselves off and kept going. Like there was no coddling of or being coddled. Like when I was a kid, I grew up in the 70s, so it's like there's you got brush it off, you'll be all right, and there was never whatever it is that was wrong. Nobody helicoptered on you and shined the big light on your problem. It was always, you got this, just get out there and keep going. And it sounds like your parents had a little bit of that in them, which in my opinion is much better than hovering around a problem, kind of making it bigger and bigger.
Absolutely. You know, they wore the burden of my disease, so I didn't have to.
Nice.
I never got to see a lot of the things they did to make sure I was normal. So I didn't have to face that. For example, I had open heart surgery when I was 5. I was in
Whoa.
the hospital for 6 months. But for me, I remember that time fondly. I remember
Yeah.
having boys. I remember never being alone. I remember, having to do my homework and stuff, but I was okay. I remember very joyously thinking of that time. But, I didn't know it was because they made sure people who came in my room were ready for the challenge, had to be emotionally ready because they wanted nothing but happiness around me.
Wow. Well, both of your parents still alive?
Yes, they are.
Well, I want to say good job, parents. You did a great job.
Yes, they are. They're still alive, still married. They have been married now for 43 years.
Wow. I've only got 30 on me and I thought I was doing good. Wow, that's fantastic. So you went through your life, you went and got yourself an education and a master's degree and then you went into being a dietitian. What brought you to that? It seems like dietitian is just sort of in the last 5 or years or so, maybe just starting to become maybe something people might strive to become. I mean, and people are really looking at diet. I mean, there's always been little factions of diet centered programs, but it seems like today everything's kind of looking at the diet in a real big way. But back then, what caused you to go down that route?
So this is kind of an interesting story. I went to college originally to be computer technology.
Okay.
I wanted to build the biometric standards that like the FBI uses.
All right.
But I went to Bowling Green State University. The year I got there, they encompassed the program into computer science.
Oh,
I hate coding. I've coded in like 5 different languages I didn't like more. And this
okay.
was a trend that was happening across the country. So the one school I found was in California who still had the program. So I was going to transfer, but I didn't want to do it at the beginning of the year. So I figured I'd wait till next semester and transfer out.
All
Because,
right.
have some of your prerequisites your freshman year. So my twin sister also went to Bowling Green. And she had mentioned this class she was taking, this nutrition class. And she was like, Nick, you want to take the class? I'm like, absolutely not. I have zero
Got
interest.
into it.
So she comes back to me a couple days later and goes, hey, Nick, I just saw some of our friends are taking class. You want to take it now? I said, absolutely not. You won't be alone. You got this. Comes back a third time and lets me know, all right, Nick, I'll make a deal with you. All you got to do is your in-class assignments, and I'll basically do your homework if you take the class.
Wow.
And I'm like,
Really wanted you in there.
that sounds like a fantastic deal. So me and my sister drew it up. I said, all right, I will be in class the next day. I went to class the next day, and I remember sitting in class. I had a professor. His name was Dr. Julian Wilford, Dr. Joe. He wasn't a dietitian, but the way he talked about nutrition was like the single greatest puzzle I'd ever heard.
Wow.
And so I literally sat in that class, walked out of class, called my mom, said, Mom, how do you feel if I was a dietitian? And went and changed my major the next day.
Wow. That
Best
happened
part of
quickly.
best part of the story is my sister hated the class. I ended up doing most of her work.
No kidding. Whoa, what a trip. What, you and your sister close? I mean,
Yeah,
you're twins, so typically that is the case, but not always.
we grew growing up, we weren't that close, but as we've gotten older, we've become much closer.
Okay, all right. And she didn't have the same genetic disorder.
No, I'm the only one.
Wow, okay. That's wild. So so coming out as a dietitian, that's not necessarily an easy career to start, you know. How do you turn that into a business?
So you can do a lot of things with nutrition. You know, I've done sports nutrition, which I love. So I've done athletes. I've done everything from middle school all the way to professional. So
Okay.
I'm able to do that. You can do long-term care, which I'm currently in. You can do hospital settings. You can do like food settings. So there's a lot of places that dietitians are that most people don't think about. So you have a lot of versatility in your degree and how you can use it.
Now, today especially, I've learned a lot. I just beat cancer after a couple of years of a brutal battle, and diet was a big part of that. And I previously to that, I had lost 50 pounds through my diet and some totally different things. I've learned a lot about nutrition and the specific values to certain people in certain situations. What's your thoughts? I mean, there's a lot of people that have these sort of, you got to do this, but not that, or some people have more of a holistic approach. What's your approach to diet and nutrition?
My approach is very simple. I try to have a very realistic meet them where they are approach. I believe if you have that very simplistic approach, it allows people to build trust in you and let them know that you want to be where they are. You
Okay.
want to meet them where they are. And we want our goals to align because at the end of the day, I'm not the one who has to do the goals.
All
I
right.
can recommend them, but I'm not doing them. So I always like to be a combination. So it's a package deal. I work out with you, you work out with me. We make goals together, and there's something we both believe we can strive towards. So that's always been my mind state as a dietitian. Very realistic, very compatible goals.
And so how do you have your business or how you work with your clients? Are you going dealing with schools or groups, or you just take on clients one at a time, or how do you do that?
So I do a lot of different things. Currently, I use a program that gets me clients. So I do one-on-one consultations. When I was doing sports nutrition, it was reaching out to different organizations, different schools, being plugged in with different trainers and having them come bring me in and speak with the different athletes. So that was how that was. I also work in long-term care. I do that by working in like a facility, providing diet education, supplement education, supplementation, wound healing. So I do all of those things too. So each one of these sectors are all things that combine to my workload.
And is there something that you have, diet, like I was saying, is such a big topic and it's really very personalized, but is there a point or two that you might say would apply to everybody with regards to diet? Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber only episodes that we offer to the supporters. And for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
Moderation.
Mhm.
I know people have heard that before, but things in moderation are going to be a big one that apply to everyone. And finding ways, food is meant to be enjoyed. Food is meant to be enjoyed and fuel. So there's not a bad meal, there's not a good meal. It's just ones that are, some are healthy and some are less healthy. Like people talk about cheat days. You can't cheat on food. It's just a relative, like, are you choosing healthy options or are you choosing less healthy options? And that's the two things I could say that applies to everyone.
Okay. And so beyond your career as a dietitian, you've gotten into a lot of other things. I see an author, a poet, an educator, a dancer, and a speaker. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your work in the arts? That seems somewhat related, but not really. What got you into writing poetry and dancing?
First and foremost, I love the arts.
All right.
The arts are one of my biggest passions and one of the things that drive me. I started writing poems when I was like 11 years old, and I've just written poems ever since then. Poetry is my first love. And then later in my life, I found dance, and I was professional for 12 years, being able to do everything I wanted to do in the dance community. And I love dance. I love the expression. I love being able to move. I love the way it makes me feel. I love the way I'm able to express without words. So all of those things make dance what it is for me. Then I found photography, which really helped me capture moments. And when I stopped drawing, because I used to draw, when I stopped drawing, photography kind of stepped in and was able to give me a different perspective. So I got to see things through a different lens, if you will.
It's wild. Photography has become an art that many, many people can engage in. And nowadays with digital photography, when I was younger, it was film only. There was no digital anything. And so if you want to be a photographer, you also had to have a bunch of money because it cost a lot to process your film. And nowadays, it seems like a lot of people are able to find their little niche as being able to look through the world in a particular lens, or being able to spotlight one thing or another, or bring out, traits or color or something like that. I think that's kind of a neat thing that people are able to do these days.
Absolutely. Being able to combine people's vision and being able to see people's vision. I just had a conversation with one of my friends who's also a photographer, and he was explaining what he was doing with his black and white photos, wanting to capture love through emotions, but they all are wearing masks. So trying to capture emotion through photography. And that idea was just so amazing to me because of that ability to capture, to write a story or paint a picture with just photos. And I think that's one of the biggest things that why I love photography.
Absolutely. And it shows here that you're an author. What have you published?
So I have 3 children's books.
Oh, nice.
They are called The Adventures of Miss Messy Susie Magoo.
Okay.
And she is a little girl with cystic fibrosis who
All right.
goes through the world and learns different therapies about her CF.
Wow.
So in the first one she learned what's called the tough cough, which is the tough cough, but we changed for alliteration. In the second book, she learns about her airway clearance meds, so like her albuterol, hypertonic saline, Dornase, antibiotics. And then the third one, she learns about her pancreatic enzyme that she needs to eat. And I've also written a cookbook.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
And tell me about the cookbook. What kind of, I'm trying to look through your eyes as a dietitian. What kind of things would you suggest, or did you put recipes up for?
It is high calorie, primarily it's high calorie with comfort food.
Okay.
And the idea with the target market was athletes, cystic fibrosis, failure to thrive, cancer pre and post chemo,
Huh?
then snapshot weight management. So the
Okay.
idea is there's so many low calorie things out there, which has a place and it's really,
Right.
but as a dietitian, I saw there's a gap for those people who actually need high calorie. there are a lot of people who need that, but who don't get it. So for me, it was an opportunity to put something in a space that I knew it needed to be.
Yeah, that's wild. I spent 7 years losing weight, and then going through chemo, I lost too much weight, and I had to figure out how to keep it on. It was a whole wild, different dynamic. Never expected that in a million years.
And that's one of the things is why that's on there, because you don't expect it.
Right.
Losing weight is losing weight is easy. Gaining weight can be hard. You know, especially when it's coming off as fast as it would be when you have like metabolic or some sickness, illness. That makes a huge difference. And so for me, being able to applicably put something in place that will allow a person to get the nutrition they need and in a tasty and very palatable way is really what the driving force for me and really what's important to me.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, a lot of people, you don't realize that some of these conditions make food just taste terrible. And you go from, being hungry and everything tastes good all your life to nothing looks good. You can't hardly keep it down anyways, and it's a whole different dynamic.
That's a big thing. And that's why one of the things I say pre and post chemo, because I know during chemo, your taste buds change.
Oh yeah.
It's harder to consume food during that. So you eat a lot of bland foods during those times. So that's why the idea is pre and post, where you can try to keep that weight up, that
Yeah.
or fill those calories high for the upcoming battle.
And how have your books done? I mean, your children's books are very narrowly focused. Are they finding the people that they're intended to reach?
Yes, I believe so. And even though it's about CF, it's like I have one niece, she loves it. It's fun, it's very colorful. So it's able to get to a different audience, but it's definitely reaching. I talked to a lot of like CF centers about it, and they purchase the books for their children and their parents. There's a lot of ways that it gets out there, which is really nice. And same with the cookbook. But there's always more avenues to explore, always more ways to get people aware and involved.
Absolutely. And so obviously your writing is pretty widely varied in the topics and the scope. What's your next plan?
I don't know yet.
All right.
That's something I've been mulling over for a little bit now. Just trying to free. I don't really have a book on the horizon, so it won't be a book.
All right.
I don't have a book on the horizon, but I am thinking of ideas like what's my next thing, and that's going to be what I always drive me. What's my next thing that will put myself on the go, to put myself in this mind state of, all right, Nick, this is what you got to do. It's go time.
Absolutely. Now, I see that you're acting as an advocate for the CF community. I think that's powerful and important. I know I learned that when I was diagnosed with cancer that you need an advocate, and it better be you first. But if you got somebody else that, had been there before you, maybe they can be helpful. With CF, it seems like it's a much more narrow field in that I don't know that there's as many experts in the field. There's a lot of different oncologists and a lot of points of view, and it's a big industry for good or ill. But CF is definitely something that's very specific in what causes it, how to maintain it. You say there's no cure, so there's obviously treatments to mitigate the symptoms. Tell me about that advocacy work.
I love being an advocate. I have been an advocate, a vocal advocate for like 14 years now. Growing up, I had no interest. That wasn't something that I wanted to do. And then something happened to me. Someone passed away. And that kind of changed everything for me. It forced me to be more vocal. It forced me into, being a public speaker. It's actually how I became a public speaker, sharing our story. And then with that, it came the representation. There's not a lot of representation for minority people. I was able to step in and fill that void as well as be a voice for the CF in general. So it became nice. I got to be somewhat of a dual role. I got to be a patient advocate and I got to be a minority patient advocate. And I also am a clinician. So I always tell people I'm a professional patient with clinical training. So I'm able to talk to clinicians in a certain way. I'm able to talk to patients in a certain way that allows me to be versatile in what I'm able to do. And really, it helps. It helps when I'm talking to people. It helps when I'm advocating.
So I have been, since my diagnosis and going through that journey, I've become an advocate because I've learned some things that most patients don't know and many doctors don't know that are very helpful. As an advocate for CF, what are your focuses on? What are the patients lacking as far as what they need versus what they have offered to them?
Right now, we have modulators, which is huge. That's been a huge, huge success for a lot of patients, really game changing. But that's only counts for 90%. So there's still a 10% population who can't use modulators. I'm actually in that 10% because I have 2 rare mutations, and a lot of minorities are in that 10%. We need something that's effective for everyone, and understand that's not a cure, but it is a very effective medication that has mitigated a lot of the symptoms with CF. And so it's a step closer in the right direction, but that's still only for, like I said, 90%. There's still that 10% that we can make sure we can't forget about.
And with CF, is it a disease that progresses until it finally consumes you, or is it a disease that sometimes, people can live with for a long life and end up, that has nothing to do with what ends their life?
Mostly it is a progressive disease. So it is progressive. With some of the new medications, we are seeing that people are older than they ever have been. And that's the life expectancy has gone up tremendously because of these new modulator therapies, which means it is very likely that people could be having conversations of passing away from natural causes other than the cystic fibrosis. But that still doesn't mean it's not very likely someone could pass away from CF. I actually just had a friend pass away last week.
Okay.
And because they were a couple years older than me, so 43 is not old. That's still a very young.
Yeah. You're not even getting started yet. Trust me. Yeah.
So it's very much still an issue. That progressive disease can still take a lot of people care for people's loved ones with the disease.
So you do public speaking, and is most of your public speaking focused on advocacy work, or do you deal with other topics as well?
My primary topics are bridging the gap between clinician and patient. So trying to bridge that communication gap to improve patient and clinician satisfaction and patient outcomes. I also talk about living without limitations. So understanding what it feels like to find passion, utilize purpose, and increase productivity.
And so you've lived a life that's affected a lot of people through your advocacy work, through your example, your expressiveness and all the different things that you do. Why don't you share a story with our audience of one person in particular that you were able to help out, to touch, to change in some way?
One of the examples that I love giving is I had someone who didn't know much about their CF. They were a late diagnosis, and they reached out to me and said, "Hey, you're another minority. I have this disease and I don't know what to do." And they were only able to see me because of my advocacy work. So they saw me on TV and saw me as Nicholas Kelly with cystic fibrosis, and they reached out to me because of it.
Okay.
And I was able to help guide them through what it's like to be a CF. And even to this day, They're one of my closest friends now, and I still guide her through what it's like to be a CF. You know, I tell her, you're only 13 years CF old.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a different, that makes me, I'm 39 CF old. So
Okay.
you're in that age where even though she's 30 years old, she's only lived with CF for this, 14 years.
Right.
So when I was 14, I was a teenager. My CF looked very different than it does now.
Right.
My taking my adherence to my meds looked very different than it does now.
Mhm.
The problem is for her, she's 30, so she doesn't have the luxury of acting like a teenager with her disease, even though she is really only 14 with the disease. So I try to help her balance that and see what that looks like. And, when she's like, I don't need to go to the doctor, I'm like, yes, you do. This is something you got to call in. I don't want to. You got to do it. You need to go to the hospital. Like, just those little things and being able to be there for her and help her understand some of the nuances of the disease.
Wow, that must be pretty satisfying to know that you've had that kind of an impact on somebody.
Absolutely.
So, excuse me. If you have this wealth of experience and this wide range of living, is there if you were forced to come up with one message to leave this audience with and say, look, you got one chance to impact these people, what do you think that message would look like?
Passion is the single most important quality a person can have. Find passion. Passion allows you to understand your why. It allows you to understand your what, and it allows you to be capable in your how. Find passion, allow that passion to utilize purpose, and then it increases productivity. And productivity could be any element of your life. It can improve that, it increases that. So, most important thing a person do is take the time to find passion. Find what you're passionate about. Find what you're passionate about in your work life. Find what you're passionate about in your personal life. Find what you're passionate about and allow passion to utilize purpose, which means allow the purpose to display what your passion is.
I like that. I don't hear that a lot from our guests, and I think that's very valid and important. I think when people can, I call it vitamin J, your joy is the same, in my opinion. You find something that makes you you can't wait to get up to go do it, whatever it is, it's your passion, it's your joy. If you can find that and find a way to live your life through it, you have a whole different world.
Absolutely. It opens a whole different spectrum for you, both like physically, emotionally. It gives you something that not only you can hold on to, but something that will help you excel.
Absolutely. Well, we've come to that spot. Why don't you tell us all how we can find your book and how we can reach you, and if somebody is interested in learning about your dietitian services or engaging you as a speaker, how would we get about you?
So first, my website is Nicholas Kelly, Kelly. R is a registered, D is in dietitian.com. So you can go to my website. You can go to Amazon to find my books. You can go to my website to find my books. And my socials are Nicholas Kelly RD. And that's across all platforms: YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. And also you can connect with me at Nick Kelly RD, and that's on Instagram. So, but Nicholas Kelly RD across all platforms. Come check me out. Always available. I love communicating. I love connecting, and I'm always looking for opportunities to meet people.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm glad to have had a chance to speak with you, and I want to thank you for being there with us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. Well, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I want to thank all of our listeners for making the show possible, and we will see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.